Everyone is talking about the Strait of Hormuz right now. But here's the thing, most people only know it as an oil route. What if I tell you this narrow strip of water is actually tied to ancient wars, global politics, and also the future of world power? And the story behind its name might not actually even be true. Now let's start with why the Strait of Hormuz matters today. This strait connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, which then leads into the Arabian Sea and eventually the Indian Ocean. Now it sounds simple, but in reality, this is one of the most critical choke points in the world because from here, oil tankers split into three major global routes. First, heading to the east, heading towards China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and even Australia. Heading towards the west through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal to Europe and North America, and finally to the south down to East Africa. Now this means a huge portion of the world's energy supply passes through this one narrow corridor. That's why every time there's tension here, global oil prices react almost immediately. But here's where it gets interesting. The name Hormuz itself comes from a figure in ancient Persian history. According to traditional stories, Hormuz was a Persian commander who challenged Khalid al-Walid, one of the greatest military leaders in early Islamic history, to a one-on-one duel. And in that story, Khalid al-Walid actually defeated him. But modern historians say this might not actually happen. There is no solid historical evidence of that duel. Most scholars believe it was a legend created later to glorify Khalid al-Walid. Now what do we know is this. There was actually a real battle going on called the Battle of the Chains, where Persian soldiers were literally linked together with chains to hold their formation. But of course, that strategy failed because while they were connected, the Arab forces were faster, more flexible, and they won. Now that battle became part of a series of conflicts that eventually led to the fall of the Sassanid Persian Empire. Now fast forward, the name Hormuz didn't just come from a person, it was also a common Persian name and even the name of a kingdom near the strait. Over time, traders and sailors used the name, especially as ships moved between Basra, Bandar Abbas, India, and even all the way to Malacca in the 13th century. Now when the Portuguese arrived in the 1500s, the name Strait of Hormuz was already widely used. Later, the British mapped the region in the 1600s and standardized the name globally. And that's how it became official. Now here's where geopolitics enters the picture. Now the body of water connected to the strait, it is called the Persian Gulf. But not everyone agrees with that name actually. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar prefer to call it the Arabian Gulf. Now why? Because the name the Persian Gulf reflects Iran's historical presence, the influence in the region itself. But technically, the name doesn't always mean ownership, just like the Arabian Sea isn't owned by Arab countries. It's simply a name shaped by history actually. Now let's talk about power. In the Persian Gulf region, Iran is the largest and one of the most influential countries. But that influence has always created tension. That's why in 1981, the Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC, was formed. It is to balance power because at the time, there were two major concerns. The first concern was Iran after its Islamic Revolution and Iraq under Saddam Hussein's command. Iraq had its own ambitions. It even claimed Kuwait as part of its territory. And later, Saddam Hussein launched a war against Iran and then it lasted at least 8 years. Now, one of the reasons why? Of course, oil. Specifically, the Khuzestan region, rich in oil and also strategically located. Now think about this. Today, the Strait of Hormuz is not just about geography. It's about energy security, global trade, military strategy, and also political influence, and potentially it could also raise conflict. But there is another perspective we have to see here. Instead of competition, what if there was cooperation? Some experts suggest something similar to Asian, where countries with different ideologies and different histories come together for stability. Now imagine if the Gulf region had a more inclusive cooperation system, not just the GCC, but including Iran and Iraq as well. A shared responsibility over the Strait of Hormuz. Now what would happen? Now because if that happens, this strait would no longer be seen as a flashpoint, but as a shared lifeline for the whole world. So next time you hear about the Strait of Hormuz, Don't just think about oil. Think about history, power, and the fragile balance that keeps the global system running. Because sometimes the most important places in the world, they aren't just the biggest one. They're the ones that the world simply cannot afford to lose control of.